Well, so a little recap. This is going to be another one of those that I hope goes kind of viral. So Adam Piggott, who is an Australian gentleman who lives, well, I don't want to say too much about him. I don't know what he wants people to know or not. But anyway, he's a Catholic who's recently gone sedeprivationist. And he's going to be speaking at what is called the XYZ, some talk, I think, in Australia, if I remember right. And he reached out to me because he apparently reads stuff on my blog and so on, for a couple of comments on some stuff he wrote. I'm going to link his blog below, and below that I'm going to link to this article that this guy wrote to sort of, slash at or to take a swipe at Adam Piggott. So in order for you to genuinely appreciate this, you might want to go first to Adam's blog to see what the two or maybe three now articles that he has at his place, and then come back to this guy who's a Protestant who basically tries to take down what Adam wrote. If you want to read along with me, it's going to be more fun for you. It's quite a longish article. I don't know if I'll be able to go through it all. But here's the important thing. I haven't read past the first 4 or so paragraphs of this cretin's blog screed. And I'm going to take it to pieces live, on the fly. So here we go. He starts out, 6 simple reasons why Catholics are not Christians. I'm going to read his blog, and as I read his stuff, I'm going to make commentary. It has become a cliché among Christianity for one group to accuse the other of not being the true Christians, or to claim that their version is the true version. This happens so often today because people refuse to read the Bible for themselves, the KJV, not the fake modern versions, and fail to look at history. Now right there, that's the second sentence, first paragraph, complete schoolboy error. And this is why I mean Protestants are ignorant. They're absolutely uneducated cretins. The KJV, or King James Version, for the agnostics among you who are just here to see the internet bum fight, the King James Version of the Bible was translated into English, and accordingly, supposedly by King James, or under the edict of King James, and is a Protestant Bible, of course. And it was supposed to be one of the best translations ever. So what did these morons do? They went to take the Old Testament version that has been edited by Pharisees for 700 years. Yeah? So the actual Old Testament, the actual Bible, has been messed with for 700 years by people who say that Jesus Christ is in a lake of boiling shit in hell. That's what the Pharisees say, right? And you think that is going to be the good version of the Bible. You don't have to take my word for this. If you're on unauthorized TV, and if you're not, I suggest you join, go on unauthorized TV and look at part 2 by, I always forget the lady's name because I'm terrible with names, but there is on unauthorized TV, there is a professor of history. It's a lady, and she's done a series of videos. The second one, just look at the second one. She gives you all the references and everything. You don't have to take my word for it. The King James Bible is an edited mess that was created by Pharisees, right? And then translated into English with further errors and complications. It is one of the worst Bibles to ever use. Now the Vulgate, which is the Bible that was in common use for the whole of Christianity until the 1500s, when the Protestants came along with their satanic versions, was a Latin translation of the original Hebrew and the original Greek. And it is a far closer thing than, the King James Version. So right there, moron, right there, shoots himself in the foot. Next part. It is a boon to the enemies. Oh, and then the part about not reading history. I mean, it's like, for a Protestant to say that it's truly ridiculous. It is a boon to the enemies of God, which is why Satan engages in creating false doctrines so often. For more than 1,000 years, the Catholic Church resolved this dilemma through brute force and the suppression of biblical truth. Another lie. Again, don't take my word for it. why don't you read up on Rodney Stark's Bearing False Witness, a book by Rodney Stark called Bearing False Witness. Rodney Stark is not a Catholic, but he is an honest historian. And he's written a book debunking the absolute heresy and nonsense that has been said about Catholics, because being a historian, he is for truth. Being an honest man, he's for truth. So although not a Catholic, he actually lists out the rubbish that has been talked about Catholics, and this is one of them. They outlawed English Bible translations for the sole purpose of keeping power. Really? Let's give a little bit of history to this uneducated Protestant. So, Protestantism started because of two sex perverts, an originally supposedly Catholic monk, a German, who wanted to bang nuns, ripped out 7 books out of the Bible, and said, you know, if the wife's not willing, you should use the maid. Apparently by force, because it doesn't seem like the maid has a choice in it. So, sex pervert, Martin Luther, who was then joined by another sex pervert who initially rejected all the perversions that Luther said, but a couple of years later he got bored of his wife and wanted to murder/divorce, same thing for him. So this king, Henry VIII, who, because he wanted to divorce his wives, said, well, you know what, Catholicism doesn't let me do it, but Protestantism, hey, that guy bangs nuns, I can murder my wives, you know. Then I can go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Yeah, I'm going to support that. And what else did he do? He stole all the, he took over all the churches, monasteries, and so on, literally stole the land, the physical buildings, all the patrimony that was in them, whether it was art, gold, and so on, took them over and had many, many, many Catholics killed. That's what happened. So, you know, the fact that the Catholics then did not want to use English King James Version Pharisee Bibles, well, you might kind of understand why. And no, it wasn't the Catholics that burned people at the stake for heresy to begin with. That was done by King Henry VIII and so on. So again, this is not history. You got to understand, these people are like Muslims. The same. You know, Muslim children get beaten for 2 hours a day and they have to recite verses of the Quran by heart. And if they get it wrong, they get beaten. This is the same. You know, no one sane and objective becomes a Protestant through objective reading of things and looking at stuff. You become a Protestant because you're born into it and you don't know any better. And this is it. You know, he's believing some lies and just random stuff that's been said to him since he was a child. None of it factual, but he doesn't know that. Recently at XYZ, our own Adam Piggott decided to take a stab at theological discussion in 2 articles that proudly proclaim that the only true church is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the only true iteration of Christianity, and all or other versions are either poorly hidden subterfuge, abominations, or both. And then he has this little gif of a woman sort of spurt laughing. It's interesting that he would use the picture gif of a woman that's laughing, but anyway. There's little point going over these articles with a fine-tooth comb, so then he refers to 2 videos, which I haven't bothered watching because it's complete nonsense. And then with that out of the way, we can now look at the main reasons, and here it comes to, I suppose, his 6 reasons. Catholicism is not Christianity, keeping in mind this is not an exhaustive list. Given Catholic means universal, and there is no teaching of a universal church at all in the scripture, it frequently uses the term churches, the whole premise of the Catholic Church is a lie. Satan wants to universalize churches because then they are easier to corrupt. The Lord wants churches independent to prevent this. Catholicism has a lot in common with Buddhism, but I digress. This is absolute nonsense. And if you give me a second, I'm gonna quote you some scripture, since that's what he thinks he's doing here. And let me just, that might have been in the other book. Okay, give me 1 second. I actually want to refute this moron properly. So I just need to open another, because as I said, I'm doing this live, so forgive me if I didn't have everything ready. I'm pressed for time. I am gonna finish today the second book, the draft form, which is partially also being edited already. So I'm just, you know, cognizant of that fact. One church. Let's just see if I can. I need to spell that properly. That would help. Right. So I just want to actually give you some references. Because I know that I had a bunch of them. But, you know, I'm not a huge Bible scholar. I don't remember this thing off the top of my head. So, maybe it's under undivided. Yeah, okay. Undivided. Let's see. Oh, I know it's in the footnotes, so if I just go through those. I am sorry, I know this is boring when somebody's doing that. You can just maybe skip ahead to when you see me talking again. Right, for the agnostics, come on, I know there's a footnote in here somewhere. Here we go. So, no. There. Okay, let me just, this is gonna get through it a bit quicker. Come on. Here we go. Yeah, so this is actually in Believe. So if you've got that book, you will see this. And I'm just quoting myself from my own book here. And the most telling piece of all is that if they even adhere to sola scriptura, they would read the Bible and see it spelled out quite clearly that a Christianity that constantly splits into two new branches cannot and is not anything Christian. And there's a footnote. And here are the references. Corinthians 1:10 to the 13th. Ephesians 4:4 to 6. John 17:21. Matthew 16:18. Acts 9:2. And generally the entire New Testament. So again, more proof that Protestants just do not read the Bible, have got no understanding of it. And, you know, the Catholic Church is called Catholic because there should be one church indivisible under God. The fact that the Protestants have got 40,000 denominations means that it's worse than Netflix. You definitely can't find anything good on Netflix, certainly not quickly, or even really fully ever. It's even harder to find a Protestant denomination that isn't complete heresy, and in fact impossible, because they all are. Anyway, points number 1. God hates idolatry. And then he quotes Exodus 24:5, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, blah, blah, blah. This includes images of Jesus Christ, and is especially true of images of his mother Mary. We'll get to her shortly. But every Catholic church is full of idols and graven images. Now, the whole point of having no idolatry is that you do not actually worship empty statues, whatever. There is no Catholic that worships a statue of Jesus or a painting of Mary. It's absurd nonsense. But you have to understand, just like the CIA paid a whole bunch of people, millions, if not billions, to produce crap that they called modernist art, similarly, the Protestants have removed all beauty from the house of God, churches, cathedrals, and so on. Go into a proper ancient Catholic cathedral and compare it to the modernistic aberrations, disgusting architecture that represents a Protestant church. It's very clear. Why? Because beauty is one of the virtues of Catholicism. So you remove beauty, of course. You remove anything that is true, just, honorable, and so on. And that's why they do it. God hates this so much, he repeatedly punished ancient Israel for it right up until he sent them off to Babylon for 70 years. You know, again, this guy's, I suppose, maybe like the Jehovah, maybe like that Protestant female priest who removed the cross from her church because it might offend Muslims. Yeah, that's Protestantism. This happened. I'm not making this stuff up. This guy is obviously of that kind of belief. 2. Only one man has the title of Father, and that is the Lord. And call no man Father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. Now, yeah, this, again, if you read this completely out of context, it seems like they're right, because the Catholics often refer to priests as fathers. But it is a honorific. Personally, I never refer to Catholic priests as father. I refer to them as Don and their name, Don Paolo, Don Giovanni, whatever. It is an honorific, like sir, let's say, in English. But what Jesus was saying here was, do not worship humans. What he meant by father is Abba, is the name of what he called Father, God. Now, again, Jesus had a father, although not biologically. Joseph was his stepdad. Every human being has a father. So if you're going to interpret that autistically, like the Protestants, then you shouldn't even call your own father Father. Does that make any sense? No. You call your father Father because he is your father, physically here on earth. You call the priest Father, again, because it's a honorific, as in you're kind of like a dad to me, sort of. But you're not worshipping them. You're not praying to Father that art in heaven. That is calling somebody on earth the same as if you're praying to God. So that's wrong. So again, ignorance, inability to read the Bible in context, inability to think logically. Because I want to ask this guy, has he ever called his own father Father? That's my next question. He's got absolutely nothing that goes against that. Oh, he says, that is not to say your biological dad is not your father per se. The point is the taking of a specifically forbidden title. All right, well, so you're basically saying that it's okay, but only when you like it. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Let's give him that one, just out of 3. God commands bishops, pastors, elders to be married with children. No, he doesn't command that. In fact, what Paul says is that a person who's leading the church should have his own house in order, which means his wife, his children, etc. should be running like that. But I always take Jesus above Paul. Don't know about you guys. Maybe you think Paul is more important than Jesus, but I take Jesus above Paul. And Jesus clearly states that certain men who are eunuchs, in other words, who are eunuchs, or however you pronounce it, without a dick, or men who cannot, either by physical virtue of the fact or mental or whatever reason, not willing or able or whatever to be with a woman, should dedicate themselves to God. And those are considered to be, they're dedicating their entire life to God. And as such, they're supposed to be the best examples of what a follower of God is. Now, at the beginning of the church, Peter, all the apostles, most of them, as far as I know, were married or probably had kids and whatever. And that was fine. And the church was new, and it was, it didn't have a lot of bishops and priests and so on. So it was like whoever came to it and was made a priest. But even from the most ancient times, it was understood that by becoming a cleric of the church, you were essentially devoting yourself to God. And even if you were married, it was considered that you would no longer have sexual relations with your wife. Now, the reason for this goes all the way back to the Old Testament. If you read in the Old Testament, the priests would not go into the tabernacle unless they had been pure for at least 3 days. In other words, no sex and all sorts of dietary requirements and so on. Why? Because you need to be pure when you're going before God. Now, if you were having sex with your wife, there's nothing wrong with you having sex with your wife, you're married to her and whatever. But if you're a priest and you do that, it is considered an impurity. Now, the Catholic Church kept this tradition from the very beginning. And although married men were made deacons and priests and even bishops, that was because they were already married and we didn't have enough people. But as the church expanded, there was no longer a need for this to be the case. And it was like, look, it's best if you're completely dedicated only to God from the beginning. Now, there's another thing that needs to be very clearly expressed here. That's got nothing to do with homosexuality. It doesn't mean that if you're a homosexual, you're going to become a priest. In fact, if you're a homosexual, you're banned from becoming a Catholic priest. That's just a fact. And the idea that Protestants have promulgated that, oh well, if you're celibate, if you're not married, if you don't have sex with women, you're going to rape little kids. No, that is an absolute nonsense. There is no relationship between not having sex with women and that means you're going to fuck children all of a sudden. No, it doesn't. What it does mean is that homosexuals have a prevalence for raping children. That is a very well-known fact. The incidence, a reported incidence of homosexuals abusing children is more than 11 times globally across the world in many, many studies that were done all around the planet, is over 11 times more prevalent that a homosexual will rape a child than a non-homosexual. And most homosexuals have been sexually abused as children. That is how the vampires create more of their own. So again, that rule is a lie. And was it controversial in the church? It has been. Some priests wanted to carry on to have relationships with their wife and so on. But it has always been from the beginning. That's the origin of it. 4, there is one mediator between God and man, who is Jesus Christ. Oh, the usual one. So here is going on about go to confession, not to confess their sin to a priest. The priest then tells them to do a few Hail Marys and their sins are no more or something. But this is heresy. Only God can absolve sins and only Jesus Christ is the mediator between man and him. We confess our sins to God alone, not to some dude in a dress. Cross-dressing is also a major sin and Catholic priests love their flowing long dresses. Again, total fucking ignorance. Again, the point of confession is not that God doesn't know what you've done. The point of confession is a practical, it is a sacrament, but it's also a practical thing. When you go and when you know that you have to go and confess what you've done that week to another human being, priest or not, and there's no point in you doing that if you're going to lie, right? If you're going to lie, then you're a liar. So if you're going to go and do that, while you're about to do some bad act, you sort of, it stops you, sort of like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to do this at the end of, on Sunday. I'm going to have to talk about this. I don't really want to do that, so I better not do this. So it's a help. It's a way to check you from doing wrong, right? And there is one man mediator between God and man. No Catholic has ever said otherwise. The mediator is Jesus Christ. And again, I'm surprised he hasn't gone to talk about the fact that, you know, the worshipping of saints or some other nonsense, which of course no Catholic has ever worshipped a saint or Mary. We ask for prayers from them. The same like you can ask your friend, hey, pray for me. Same thing. When you do a Hail Mary, that's what it is. Pray for me. I'm a sinner. That's basically what it is. 5, Mary is just a woman and a sinner like the rest of us. She is not God nor mediator between God and man. Where he gets the Catholics say that she is God, I don't know. That's from him. Despite this, the Catholics worship Mary as the Mother of God. Well, here's the thing. Jesus came out of Mary. She is, on earth, the Mother of God. That is a fact. Now, if you're a Protestant, I don't know, maybe you think that Jesus came out of a cauliflower or something, grew in a field, I don't know, came off an apple tree. I don't know what Protestant beliefs you have. But Mary definitely gave birth to Jesus. So she is the mother of Jesus. Jesus is God. So it is a world-based, physical name. It's a fact. It's not some kind of spiritual thing that elevates her above God or even above Jesus or anything like that. Never said any of such thing. Mary, Mother of God, is essentially a Christianized version of the Earth Mother Goddess. And here we go, just inventing things out of... I want to ask him, where did Jesus come from? Physically, how was he born into the world? Answer that question. Salvation is through faith, not works. Again, one of the books that good old Luther ripped out of the Bible, James. Why do you think that is? Read James. It's a short book. Just read it. Yeah, you're not saved by grace alone, and you're not saved, and once saved, always saved. That's another idiotic Protestant belief system. So, according to Protestantism, if you become a Christian, you go and get some baptism done, that's it. You're saved. You can now go on to rape children, defraud people, and do whatever you want. No issue. And that's his 6 points. And I now have a call from my daughter, so I am going to leave it there. But that's only 6 points demolished in 24 minutes or less. And good day.